everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is now part 2 of how I've become disabled and our story and my journey. I hope you enjoyed part 1, but let's dive straight into it again. But this time they couldn't stop it. It was happening full force. All they could do was give me more of the medicine to try and slow the contractions down, try and stop them. I was having them actually daily for quite a while, and then I was having them daily to really slow my labour down and to try and make sure that she was a bit more developed, because she did have a problem with her lungs. So by this time I had had multiple rounds of steroids to try and mature her lungs, and at this point I think I had my last round, because they knew, give me one more dose, it's not really going to hurt. But I did put on a lot of weight from having all these steroid injections to help the baby, which of course I didn't mind. If it meant I got a bit bigger, then so be it. I'd rather her have a fighting chance, you know. So I didn't really care about that, to be honest. And then it got to 2020 and then COVID hit, and it was probably the worst time for us that it could have hit. Not going to go into too much about COVID, but this was just part of our experience and what we did. But because of this, it meant that Sean was no longer allowed to attend to any appointments with me, bless him. So he literally was the car park's best friend. So from there on, he literally sat in the car, he waited for me to have all my monitoring done daily. At this point it was literally daily, we was in there daily, and we was there from like, as soon as they opened their doors at 9 o'clock until I got sent home. And some days that would be really late, and he was literally back and forth like a yo-yo to and from the hospital. I think it was a lot for everybody. And then I got actually kept in at this point, and I was in for 2 weeks or so. And then at that point I was like, I need to go home, because I don't sleep at all when I'm in hospitals. I was like, I need to go home, I need to get some rest before I deliver the baby. And the doctor agreed. I was to check in at the hospital, and then I was allowed to go home at 9 o'clock in the evening, but I had to be back at the hospital at 7 o'clock in the morning for the doctors to come around on the wards. So I was still an inpatient, but they were allowing me to go home and sleep for a couple of hours, and then be back on the ward in the bed for 7 o'clock in the morning. So we did that for like 2 weeks, a week and a half, something like that, until we actually had her. And at that point, from the point at 30 weeks it started, and a point at 34 weeks, and give or take a couple of days either side, but it was about 4 weeks. So I was in slow labour for that long. It was exhausting, it was tiring. They're lucky I've got a high pain threshold. It wasn't a nice experience at all. But at that point it got to 34 weeks, and I was 6 centimeters dilated by that point, and they couldn't let me go any further, because if they did, my fractures, the way one of my fractures were, it would have completely protruded straight through my spinal cord. So I wasn't allowed to give birth naturally. I wasn't allowed to go any further than 6 centimeters because of that issue. Yeah, so it was straight down for a C-section. We had NICU on standby. There was a couple of NICU nurses actually in the theatre with us, and then there was loads of doctors and stuff there. So I had to have a heart surgeon in the room on standby because of how serious my heart condition was. So because of my heart condition, that was why I passed out and fell down the stairs and done my back in the first place. So it was an unknown heart condition. Apparently I've had it all my life, but we didn't know about it until this situation happened. But I think if you have more checks and stuff on your heart and your certain organs, I think we should be having them routinely checked at our doctors, but of course we don't because they're so overrun. So it's just like a vicious cycle, isn't it, really? So they were all there in the theatre room, and then Sean was in the car park at this point, and he was in the car, he was waiting, but I got prepped and I got took down to theatre. I was actually having my spinal block done when Sean came bursting through the doors, and that was the first time I had seen him in quite a while, because I was in a few days prior to actually having my C-section. Yeah, so he come through the doors, and then the surgery started, and then this is when hell broke loose again. I got to say, it's one of the worst experiences in my life, but she's the best thing that's ever happened to us. So I was going through my surgery. Obviously they pulled baby out, and then she's crying, she's screaming, she's nice and pink, and then they've cut the umbilical cord, and then she's gone bluey grey colour, and she's completely flatlined, and she's completely stopped breathing. That's when the emergency buzzers go off, and then we had about 50 people come running into the room. That's when all the NICU nurses and doctors were all surrounding baby, and they were doing CPR on her. They were trying to revive her. They were there for what felt like a very, very long time, which, looking back on records, I think it was like 5 minutes they were doing CPR on her, and then they spent another 5 minutes breathing for her. But they were there trying to stabilise her before they could even move her out of the theatre room, but because she kept flatlining, then they kept bringing her back, and then she flatlined and bringing her back. It was the worst thing ever, laying there and not being able to move or do anything. Completely, like, her life's hands are in the doctors and the nurses. Like, there's nothing I can do. I'm literally just laying there helpless, like screaming, like, save my baby, please save my baby. That's literally what I was screaming. It was absolutely traumatising to literally laying there and having her on the right hand side of me, watching them, having the full view of them doing that to your child and trying to save her. Yeah, it was traumatising, really was. I would never ever wish it upon anybody, never. So when they finally stabilised her, Sean ran off to the NICU with the baby, so he went off with her. So then that means I was left on my own again, which I would prefer him to be with baby. That is more important, really. And then I got took. Well, I had complications with the surgery, so I don't know whether the doctor accidentally cut my bladder or what, but they done something to my bladder, which resulted in me needing, they had to do something to fix it, or I can't even remember, but I was in surgery for quite a while. I think in total we went down at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was having my spinal, I think it was 20 to 8, I was having my spinal block, and we didn't come out of the theatre room till I think it was 12:30. So we was down in theatre for a very long time. Yeah, so we was down in theatre for a very long time, and then I got took to recovery, and I was in recovery for quite a while. Again, I was asking all the nurses, is baby okay? What's happening? Didn't get told anything. I was like, we're not sure, we'll go check in a minute, and obviously they were coming back and forth, and they were checking, but then no one was telling me. Everyone was kind of hiding it from me, how unwell she was. But I'm the kind of person, I would rather be told straight up what's happening so I know, rather than being lied to, which I didn't appreciate that, and I didn't like that from the hospital. I didn't like anybody lying to me. And then I went up, I got taken back up to the ward when I was stable enough, because I know my heart was like up and down a little bit. So then we got took back to the ward, and then again at that point no one was allowed in or out. So I wasn't allowed to see Sean again. So I didn't actually see him until weeks after. I was in hospital all on my own again. We wasn't allowed any visitors, wasn't allowed to see anybody. They weren't allowed to drop anything off. We weren't allowed to pick anything up, nothing. So we literally had our C-section the day before everything closed. So if we had had her a day later, he wouldn't have been allowed to be in the theatre. He wouldn't even have been allowed to be in the hospital. So I'm very thankful that he was there and he did get to see the birth, and he did. I know as traumatic as it was for us, but he still experienced that and he still saw that. He didn't, you know, meet her weeks after. So yeah, I got taken back up to the ward. I was obviously really poorly from having a spinal, because I always am with stuff like that. Again, me asking the nurses and the doctors how the baby was, no one told me anything. And then hours and hours went past by this time. Because I remember having the dinner rounds, so I didn't eat anything because I was so ill. And it was after the dinner rounds had finished, so it must have been heading on to like 6 o'clock. When someone, the NICU, must have been the NICU nurse, because she wasn't in the same uniform. She was in one of the children ones. It must have been her, one of the ladies from downstairs. She came up and she said, baby's fine, she's stabilised now, she's completely incubated, but she's fine. We've just come to get your colostrum that was in there already for her in the syringes, to try and help boost her oxygen levels and stuff with that. So thankfully that must have worked a little bit, because within 48 hours she was out of incubation. And then it got to quite late in the evening. I think it was about an hour and a half later, so it must have been about 7:30 in the evening. The NICU nurse finally come back up with a wheelchair and got me and took me down to meet baby for the first time. None of the other nurses on the ward would even acknowledge me when I was asking to go downstairs. I was even saying to them, just get me a wheelchair, I'll take myself down there. But none of the nurses would. They weren't having any of it, which I think was really unfair and quite nasty of them. Even if she was still being worked on, and still, I could have still, you know, waited at the door and watched through a window. So I still think that was quite horrible of them. But by this point, Sean was only allowed to be there watching through the window for about an hour, and then he actually got kicked out of the hospital and sent home. He got told he had to leave. He wasn't allowed in there anymore. So I think that was quite horrible too, when they could have waited until she was stabilised a bit more, before they had asked him to leave and chucked him out. So yeah, it got to about 7:30 at night, and then I finally went down to meet her, which was an amazing experience, but I know she was really poorly. She was on the CAP machine. She was completely in an incubator. She was recovering with her lungs and stuff. So and then I went back upstairs after an hour because they had asked me to leave, which I'm not sure why. I think it was half an hour to an hour they had me there for. And then I ended up going back down the next day. So I think it must have been in the morning sometime. I think it was like mid-late morning. They took me back down there again to try and pump some breast milk for her. But my body wasn't having any of it because of how poorly we both were. And then it was the following day, so she would be 3 days old then. She got took off the CAP machine during the previous night, so she would have been like 2.5 days old when she got taken off it, and she managed just to have a normal oxygen mask. She was still having low oxygen readings, but she was breathing for herself. The machine wasn't breathing for her. So she had that, she was breathing for herself, even though she was still needing a lot of help with, she was still, what's the word, she was still highly reliant on the oxygen to breathe properly. And then I think it was day 4 or 5, they actually allowed me to get her out of the incubator and actually hold her and give her a cuddle and stuff for the first time. So yeah, has some beautiful pictures and stuff. The new nurse that was on that day, actually got to cuddle her. She was lovely. I wish she was there from the start, to be honest. She was there with me. She took some pictures for me, obviously because I was in the wheelchair and I was holding baby, so I didn't really have any flexibility. So yeah, she was there. She took all the pictures for me, and then I managed to breastfeed her then. She latched on straight away, bless her, and then that went really well. And she then I think it was day 5, and then she ended up just being on the nasal oxygen. I'm not sure what that's called, but did you know the ones that just go under your nose? She was just on that, just to boost her a little bit. And then I didn't actually know this until later on after we got discharged and I saw the papers, but the baby was actually severely septic. So she had quite bad sepsis, and then that was obviously the reason why she got put on antibiotics before that I didn't know about. So she was on antibiotics from the moment she was born till I think it was 2 weeks old, and then she completely finished them because we was in hospital for that whole time. So as the doctors and the nurses were closely monitoring both of us very closely, because I was obviously with the heart condition and then the bladder injury that they happened during surgery, and my incision was then infected. It just happens when you have poor circulation and poor blood and not a very good heart, and then you have quite a big surgery like that. My body didn't react to it very well, so the healing process didn't go well at all. So yeah, that happened. So as both of us were recovering, I think at this point Everly must have been about a week old. I got taken downstairs to put on to be put in one of the NICU rooms so we could be with her, which was really nice because then I was able to fully care for her, wasn't relying on the nurses or anything like that. So then it got to a point where I was actually, you know, she's a week old and I'm only just at a point ready to, you know, look after her and, you know, cater to all her needs, which was nice because then it meant like I had my baby back, you know. So we got to that point, and then after that it was just a thing of the next week of both of us on our antibiotics, on our IV drips, trying to get better and trying to get as strong as possible so we can go home. So that was the next big step, was just to getting strong enough to go home, making sure she's feeding properly, making sure there's no other issues with her lungs, making sure all her organs and stuff were working properly, from obviously her needing CPR and stuff after she was born. So they were doing all them tests. They come round, and then they done all her hearing tests and stuff, and then she failed her hearing tests. I think it was just because of how she was born, and then she must have had a bit of fluid or something in her ears, but she failed that. And then we had to go back at 6 months and she failed that too. We went back at a year and then she finally passed that. So there's nothing wrong with her hearing now. I think it just took a while for all the fluids to drain out of her ears. Yeah, after we got sent home, she was about 14 days old. And then after that we were still being asked to check in at the hospital or daily. And we'd done that for another 2 weeks, so they wanted to check on me and baby daily, and we was allowed home, but we still had to return to the hospital daily to get checkups and to make sure that we're both recovering well, which we did. It was hard going back and forth with being in a wheelchair and then having a newborn and, you know, everything that comes with being a new parent, but then having a new body and being in a chair for the first time, and, you know, having all of that joined together, it was really hard to get out the house daily and to have them checking up on us. They weren't allowed to the house, we had to go to them at the hospital, which I think is really silly, like with the situation that we was in. But it was what it was. Baby was over them that 2-week period after we got discharged. She lost a lot of weight, but after 2 weeks, and then she would have been 4 weeks old, she started to gain again, so it wasn't much of an issue. And she gained quite quickly after that, which was really good. And then with my scar, I think I had an infection in it 3 times. For my scar to even, you know, close back together, it took 4 or 5 months, which was a very long time to recover from a C-section. So I still had all open wounds and stuff there for a good 4 or 5 months until it had fully closed and the infection had gone. When Everly was 8 weeks old, so then we were home plodding along for another 4 weeks, and then the same thing happened again. I was coming down the stairs, but I used to go down the stairs on my bum because that was the only way I used to be able to get down the stairs. Stupidly, I had little one on me when I fell down the stairs, but again, lucky enough, I fell down bum first, so I held on to her. You know, she didn't get hurt throughout any of this. There wasn't a scratch on her. No one knows how she didn't fall off me, but apparently when my husband found me at the bottom of the stairs, apparently I had hold of her so tight that there was no way that she could have fell out of my arms, you know, even though I had passed out. Must just have been mother's instinct and knew, you know. But yeah, we all got checked over by the paramedics. She was absolutely fine, but yet again, I got taken to hospital on another spinal board, and I had made my injuries worse. So that set me back even further. By this point, I had, you know, if it wasn't for Everly, I would have had enough of life, to be quite honest. I know that's not a really good thing to say, but that was my feelings, and with the situation that we was in at the time, having her, she honestly saved my life. I know the accident happened while I was pregnant, but I believe that it would have happened regardless. So I was actually very thankful that we did have her, and we had something positive to look forward to in the future, and we had a beautiful, bright little girl to bring up, and, you know, she was the light of our lives, and she still is. So yeah, so she's such a beautiful little girl, and we wouldn't change anything for the world. We really wouldn't. She's honestly the best thing that could have ever happened to either of us. So yes. And now from that point on, it's, you know, this all happened throughout COVID, so there wasn't much resources that they could give to help us at all. But by this point, things were still fully locked down, but I was able to see like physios and stuff, and they were able to show us what we need to do. I know I wasn't in a spinal rehab centre, but it was better than, you know, not doing anything. I needed to get my blood circulation going through my legs. I needed to, you know, to stop further medical hiccups. I had to get my limbs moving, get my blood flowing to stop me getting blood clots, which was the main concern, because I'm at severe risk of blood clots because of how thick my blood is. So we had to do that, and we started physio. It got to a point where physio wasn't really working anymore because there's only so much you can do from home. And then luckily enough, all the centres started opening again, and this must have been by the end of 2020 by this point. And then I was able to go actually into the centres and have my physio with a physiotherapist there. And then that went on for a good 2 years or so. And then we had a good 6 months or so break, and then I went back to the physios actually come to me this time at home. So I had at home physio for a good 6 months or so, and then that led us I think it was Christmas 21. Yeah, it must have been. No. Yeah, so that led us 6 months from that. Then it was come to a point where, because of everything that had happened, Sean actually decided to resign from his job in the military. It wasn't for us as a family anymore. You know, I was newly disabled, we had a newborn, we had an infant. It wasn't ideal that he kept getting pulled away from the family. It wasn't ideal that he wasn't there in the evenings, you know, because at that point I couldn't bath baby. I couldn't get her in and out of her cot. It wasn't feasible. I needed him there for the nighttime routine. I got to a point where I managed on my own during the day with her and having her napping in her sleeping pod and things like that, but at night time, for safe sleeping concerns and stuff like that, he needed to be home to get her in and out of the cot for feeding times, nappy changes, you know, running up and down the stairs making bottles. You know, because it got to that point where throughout the whole day there was no sterilised bottles left, so I relied on him to sterilise the bottles and bring them up to the baby station that we'd set up beside my bed. It was just one of them. He needed to be there every evening, and doing that job, you couldn't, you know, at a click of your fingers he could be the other side of the world. And it just wasn't feasible for our family anymore. So he ended up giving his notice in on that, and then he got into another public service job, and that is where he currently is. I can't actually disclose where he works for safety reasons. Yeah, we can't disclose that at all, so unfortunately you might be able to put two and two together, but yeah, we can't disclose that at all. But he still is in the public service sector. But it just means that he can come home every night and he's with the family, and he doesn't get shipped off, you know, he doesn't at a moment's notice. He's not the other side of the world. He gets notice and he's here with his family majority of the time. But where we are now, you know, I got my mum, she lives across the road, and I got the rest of my family here, so I have amazing support here now. I'm back with my family, which is the main thing that we wanted. I didn't want to be, you know, 100 miles away in a town I hardly knew. I needed to be back home with my family, so we decided to make that move. We decided to move out of the military accommodation and move into our own, and that is just what we did, and it's been the best thing that we could have ever done as a family. The little ones thrived here. You know, we got the beach over the road, we've got her nursery down the other end, we have, you know, town's not too far away, so I literally have access to all the shops. I can have access to her nursery if we need to go out or go to the park, or, you know, if I want to do anything with her, I can, because it's fully accessible. I don't have to rely on anybody. So if I need to run out and get a baby some milk, I can do that. I'm not calling up people saying, are you going to the shop, are you know what I mean? It's not, I'm fully independent doing that, which is now really nice. I don't have to, you know, be begging anyone to go to the shop for me if I need something, or spending £10 on Uber Eats express delivery, or, you know, because, you know, they go to the shops for you and stuff. So we were spending a fortune on that. And it actually got to, I think she must have been around a year old. He again then got sent off somewhere, and so it meant I was at home alone with the little one, and I had to bath her. There was no option, I had to do it. So I tried my best, but I actually I actually passed out a little bit, and I fell straight into the towel rack radiator that was in the bathroom, you know, them long ones that you get to put your towels on. I'd actually fell into that, and I had completely split my collarbone in half. So your collarbone is meant to be like straight like that, and mine had like completely broken, like slipped like that. So I had to deal with that too then. So then that meant only limb that was left was my right hand. So it was a bit of a joke really. So then I was in my sling and stuff for quite a while. I was really lucky. The position that I was in, having a sling for 12 weeks was enough to for my bone to fix itself. But yeah, when I done my collarbone, that is when my heart doctor upped my meds again, because I have a really high heart rate, like to the point where it's like well in its 200s, and that's like really high, it's dangerously high. So the first lot of medicines they gave me after my second accident, so this was after baby because you can't have them while you're pregnant, they lowered it, and they lowered it enough to get it down to like 160, 170, but it's still really high. And then with my low hypertension on top of that, it just, yeah, it wasn't ideal. So if I had low blood sugars one day, then that would mean that I'm passing out. So I'd always have to make sure kind of like my blood sugars are high. Had to make sure that I was eating well, that I wasn't forgetting meals. You know, I was need to make sure that I'm fully hydrated all the time. So that's something that I know now that's really important to keeping my heart healthy. So yeah, because of that, after I broke my collarbone, the doctor wasn't happy, so he's upped my dose again. So that's now 3 times that he's upped it. And thankfully this time my heart has stabilised quite a lot since, and that's lowered my heart rate all the way back down to like high 90s, 100. It doesn't ever, it's very rare it goes over 110 now, which I'm very thankful for. So that's lowered it massively, but I think if I stopped them, then my heart rate would shoot back up to 200s again, I think, without a doubt. So then meds really are key to keeping that heart rate down. So yeah, that's very important with that. But I think out of all of this, long-term side effects, Everly does now have quite severe asthma. She's on multiple different inhalers for that because she has scar tissue on her lungs. But again, she's going to have to manage her asthma for the rest of her life because of that. But we are very lucky that she doesn't have any other damage or anything from the situation that happened at her birth. So it's just a scarring on her lungs which is causing her to have her asthma. That's the only damage that had done. But she's managing it that well. She knows it's important to take her medicines. So she's coping well, she's managing well, she's still running around being a little girl, like, you know, like she should. So it's not affecting her too much, touch wood. But yeah, out of all of this, we had Everly, that she was 6 weeks early. She was born at £6 3 ounces. She was born middle of April when she wasn't due till June. And she was born at around, I think it was 34 weeks and a couple of days gestation. So yeah, that was my life story. It was the story of all the situations and everything that happened over the last 4 years. So bringing you up to speed to today. It's just gone past my 4-year anniversary since my accident, and I'm doing well. I'm managing to take a few steps and plod along around the house. I'm very independent here. We've made the house to a point where I can pretty much do a lot of things on my own. I don't really have to rely on anybody for anything. I do have to have a cleaner come in once a week and do deep cleans and stuff. and then just to and from hospital appointments. If the husband isn't here, my family helps me with that, but other than that I really do everything on my own. But if I am having a bad day, then my husband or my mum will come and cook dinner, but that isn't too much of a big deal. And then I'm still doing, well, I've just finished doing my physio with the physiotherapist, so I'm not doing that anymore. They have discharged me from that. There's nothing more that they can do for me in that aspect. I am now doing hydrotherapy, so that's when you get in a warm water pool and do exercises, and that's been helping me massively. So I've only been doing that the last couple of months, and I've already seen a really big improvement, especially in my right hip, and we are hoping that that continues to help my pain levels and my inflammation in my body and my lower back. We're really hoping that that continues to help. So that's a really good thing. And then I'm hoping to start working with a coach and personal trainer in the next few weeks to start strengthening my core muscles. So we are hoping that by strengthening all my core muscles and strengthening my back will mean that I can walk that a little bit more, because I've already proved everybody wrong. All the doctors have all said to me that I'd never walk again, and I have proved them wrong by walking a few steps, you know. Just walking from here to a few steps to the bathroom is just proving everybody wrong, really. So you just never know where you're going to be, you know. In a few years time I could be in a completely different situation, but for now I'm still needing to use mobility aids, don't get me wrong. I'm still needing you know, help here and there and doing deep cleans and stuff, but I'm pretty independent and I don't really let anybody do anything, because I know people like to just take over, and you know, especially when they see a disabled person with a child, I get a lot of negativity from that, especially when we're out in public, which is quite harsh really. But I always get people saying, well, you should never have had children if you're disabled, and it is very hurtful, because people don't realise the trauma and you know, the pain, and they just don't know your story. So I think it's that people should think before they speak. I think that's the saying. And if you don't have anything nice to say, then just don't say it, because there's some people out there that have been really nasty towards me and little one when we've been out, because when we go out I use my mobility scooter, so to see that I'm in a chair and then I've got a young child with me, and then they think that I'm not capable when I'm fully capable, which I have proved. You know, she's almost 4 now, she'll be 4 in April, and she's the most intelligent, thriving little girl that you probably would ever meet. So that's just proved that, you know, I am capable, and it doesn't matter what situation you're in, whether you're in a chair or you're fully able. You know, everyone's able to be parents, so it's not. Hi guys, so sorry for the changed angles and stuff again. The battery died, so I had to change that. So just wanted to quickly continue with what we were saying before. So if you do see anybody in a chair when you're out and about, just ask them if they need help, instead of just staring or anything like that. Just go and ask them if they need any help, if they're okay. Yeah, just be nice, guys. It's you know, you could find yourself in this situation one day. You know, I certainly didn't think I'd be in this situation, but here we are. It can happen to anybody and everybody. You know, ill health can hit you when you least expect it, just like it did me. So yeah, just be kind to each other, guys, and thank you to everybody who has watched. If you have any questions, please comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer all the questions, and then please subscribe if you want to, and comment. everybody comment. Let me know what you think of these videos, and then please like, guys. So thank you very much. Bye.